Can everybody hear me now? Let me go back to my face camera. I'm not sure if it was catching everything before. Can people tell me if they can hear me now and see me? I'm not sure what happened with my settings a second ago. If not, I'll start again so that you don't miss any of the beginning information. I'm hoping this is okay. Pat, you said, has it started yet? Can you hear me? Let me text my social media person. I just want to be sure that you are hearing me. Oh, okay. Okay, all right. So, Ellen, you said you can see me but missed everything until just now. Hi, Sally from Rhode Island. Okay, so let me start over. I think I had kind of a glitch on my settings there for a minute. So no big deal though. We can start again. Okay, so what I started to say, you can hear from France. Oh, okay. I don't think it was catching the beginning. So happy April and happy National Serger Month. Hi, Beryl. Hi, Marlon. Okay, good. Hi, Rita. Mary Jo, Helen, Lynn. Okay, now, okay, this is good. Okay, so I'm going to go over everything again, just starting, because for some reason, I'm sorry, I think something glitched out on me on my settings. So, no big deal though. Let's start again. Okay, so today we are going to do shearing, and it's National Serger Month. April is, so if you are in the market for a new machine or software, there are phenomenal savings on sergers with your dealers. And again, if you're thinking about buying a new Bernina or Burnett machine or software, before you purchase, contact me and send me your mailing address. I will send you a $100 rebate coupon from Bernina of America. This is good in the U.S. only. Hi, Kim. Okay. Hi, Diana. Thank you for everybody for letting me know, because that was, I think, something glitched out on my computer. But anyway, we have the $100 rebate, but you have to contact me before you make the purchase. Send me an email, gail@gailpatrice.com. I will put one of these in the mail for you. You'll send it into Bernina. This is good in the U.S. only, and it's a thank you from Bernina Corporate for making the purchase. And as I say, this on top of all the April savings for sergers. Amazing. So that's good. Now, going back to me, my shameless plug for me. I have some different things on sale for National Serger Month. I have my locking forks, blue or red. I also have Thread Fusion, my favorite toy. Comes like this. Thread Fusion. Also, my 12-weight spaghetti threads that you're going to see today. I'm going to be using those to serge. I have Bayside Blooms, which are the pretty nice pastels. Also, Paint Box, which are the bright and bold colors. So those are all on special with the April Surge. This is the code that you use. All uppercase, all together. April Surge. Okie doke. So, I'll get these out of the way. Oh, Carolyn, you got yours. Good. Hi, Judy from Maryland. Okay, good. All right, I'm so glad I asked, because I had a feeling nobody was hearing me before. So, anyway. All right, so I've got that out of the way. Let me move all of this stuff. Now, what I started to say before you could hear me was that we are going to be doing shearing on your serger. And there are some very good reasons to learn how to do this on your serger. And the number one thing is that when you do shearing on your sewing machine, which works very well, but you have to hand wind the bobbins with your elastic thread. And it's always kind of a guessing game of whether you're using the same exact amount of tension as you wind it on. And because elastic thread is so bulky and thick, you can't wind that much onto one bobbin. So if you have a project, say where you're doing a lot of shearing across the front and back of a dress or a top, from top to bottom, you'd have to wind a bunch of bobbins. Very time consuming. When you do this on your serger, you can put that spool of elastic thread on your chain looper spool pin, feed it through the chain looper, and you're good to go, and put thread in your needle. So we're going to be using the chain stitch for this, and I don't think that you saw my samples either, so let's go to those. This is a lightweight single gauze. What I did before I did the shearing was I ran a rolled hem with variegated 12-weight thread, which makes a gorgeous rolled hem, on the top. Now on this one, I was just kind of playing around to get my tensions and stitch length and everything else set. So I did not draw lines. So you can see that it is not super even, but the shearing looks really nice on this. And this is the needle thread that you're seeing on the top of the fabric. When I flip this over, here is the elastic thread that's in my chain looper. So that's that. Then I wanted to try it on something with a little bit more of a crisp hand. This is a really nice shirt weight fabric that I had in my stash. And it's almost like a lawn, but it does have a little bit more crispness to it. It's really nice. And on this one, I drew guidelines beforehand. I ran the rolled hem off prior to doing the shearing. But I did lines with a friction pen so that my stitching lines would be evenly spaced from each other, and that worked out well. This is serger cone in this one, in the needle. Here is my elastic thread on the back that's in the chain looper. So it worked out beautifully. And let's go to, isn't that pretty for a background? Let's go to the screen and take a look at what my settings are. So I am on a 2-thread chain stitch, number one. And on this one, I have the 12-weight spaghetti thread in my needle. Now, do I need a top stitch needle for this? No. And you can't use a top stitch needle when you're doing cover stitching and chain stitching. You want to go to your ELX 705 needles or the ELX 705 with the SUK suffix on them. Those are more, the SUK, let me just go to me. The SUK suffix on the end of that listing has more of a ball point on it. Now, I just used the regular ELX needles on this. I did not have any trouble whatsoever with it shredding or piercing the thread, the elastic thread on the back. It was fine. If you find on your machine that you do have that kind of an issue, switch to those SUK. But you can get 12-weight thread through the eye of that needle. But again, if I were doing something in overlock mode with 12-weight thread in my needle, I would put in that top stitch. You cannot use top stitch needles in cover chain stitch mode. The stitch formation will not be correct. So just to get that out of the way. But you can get the thread through the eye of your ELX needle. You want to stitch a tiny bit slower with the 12 weight thread in a regular needle, simply because the eye is smaller, there's more friction. You don't have to go super slow, but you do want to make sure that you, just a little bit, just to slow down. And again, you've heard me say I consider anything other than stitching a straight line a specialty technique. So you want to keep your lines even and looking nice. So a moderate speed should be fine. I did not have any trouble at all with the spaghetti thread. If you're using a rayon thread, you definitely want to slow down. Rayon thread is more fragile, and you can use it on your serger, but you need to slow it down just a little bit because it does tend to break more easily. So I am going to do a sample on that same blue gauze that you saw on my sample, this one. And what are some of the fabrics that you would want to use? Things like quilting weight cotton, gauze, a shirt weight cotton. You can definitely do light to medium weight knits. It's beautiful with that and super, super comfortable. Would I use it with sweatshirt fleece? Absolutely not. Would I use it with corduroy or anything other than a super lightweight denim? Maybe if it was very lightweight denim, I would use it. But anything that's like a jeans weight, you could try it. I never say no to anything. You can try it and see what you get, but I don't think you'd get the gathering and the beautiful shearing effect that you're looking for. Judy's asking, what brand is the elastic thread? Well, Judy, this is elastic thread that I bought a few years ago. Did I save the packaging? No. But if I recall correctly, I think it's Dritz, okay? It's just a regular thread. I have it in my chain looper. Let me pull it off of the machine for a second. I'll rethread. So this is what it looks like. I think it's Dritz, if I recall correctly. I think I just bought it like at a regular, like at Joann's or one of those stores a long time ago. But I've never really had any occasion to do anything with shearing on a garment since I've had this machine. So this was the first time I did it. So now that I've got this off, let's walk you through how to get this all set up. So let's go to our screen. Oops, that's not it. And that's not it. Let's go. Here we go. Okay. So I'm doing a 2-thread chain stitch. So I have my needle in, and my chain looper is going to have my elastic thread in that. Now, on my machine, I have the little heart, which means that has a memory. This is a perfect example of when you would want to be able to save your settings in memory. Shearing is something you might do once in a blue moon on a garment, unless you do a ton of sundresses or tube tops or whatever, all in a row, and then you would definitely remember it. But you might do some things that are sheared for this summer. Maybe you're not going to use this stitch again until next year. And you know, if you can remember all your settings, fantastic, but it's always nice to have them in memory. So I popped mine in over here. So I left my chain needle tension, I have it on 3.3, which was the default setting. I cranked up my chain looper tension to 2. Anywhere between 1 and 2 will give you nice shearing. I found that when I went up to 2, that gave me the nicest gathering, or the gathering that I preferred. If you wanted a slightly softer gathering, you could bring that chain looper tension down somewhere, as I said, between 1 and 2. My machine will go up to a stitch length of 4.5, but I kept my stitch length on 4, and I found that that worked very nicely. And I did not touch my differential feed. I left that on 1. Some machines designate that as N. So I just left that on the normal setting, and I still got my beautiful gathering on that. So I'm going to go to the machine. I am going to put my, let's see, I'm going to get my elastic thread back on my chain looper. I'm going to go to me. I'm going to put this on. It's just on the spool pin for my chain looper. Bring it up in the telescope arm. Now, when you bring this into your pre-tension area, you're going to need to stretch that elastic so that it's taut to make sure it clicks into that pre-tension area. So be aware of that. So I'm going to just pull it. And you want to hear your machine and feel that click to make sure it is caught in there. And I'm going to pull it down. And as you know, elastic is elastic, and it has a mind of its own. So you're going to pull a nice long piece of it, longer than you typically do with serger cone thread or other thread in your chain looper, because it is elastic and it has a tendency to kind of bounce back and snap back. Hi, Diane from down East Maine. Okay, so, and for this, I am going to use my bypass bracket. I did a tip clip a few weeks ago on using your bypass bracket for multiple threads with thread fusion. But here is another example of why it's good to know all these little components of your machine and when and why you'd want to use them. So I've got the front of my machine open, and I'm going to bring my camera over so that you can see. Let me just bring it over a little bit, just in case. I don't want anyone to get kind of dizzy or anything. I think I'll bring my machine over, actually. I think I'll turn that. Let me see how that looks. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Let me bring in another light. The inside of the machine is dark. And unfortunately, this is about as light as I can make it. Okay, so here is my elastic thread. It's through the threading route for the chain looper. I am going to put it right in here. Let me turn this a smidge more. I'm going to put it right into my bypass bracket here. And then I'm going to use my thread cradle. Pulling it through. And you want to make sure when you bring it, make sure that it's above the knob that closes the tubes. Let me just, it's right up here. So make sure it's not caught underneath the big knob that closes your air threading tubes. Let me see if I can bring this in just a little bit closer. Oh, good. Okay. And it's white on white, so it's kind of hard to see. Sorry. So I have this. I am going to close my air threading tubes. I'm stepping on my foot control. They're locked in now. I have a red thread that I'm using right now for my thread cradle. And I am going to put that through the air port for the chain looper. Oops, and I let go of it. And that's what happens. It goes flying when you let go. Don't do that. Okay. And I think you can see it. It came out of the eye of the chain looper right here. Now I'm going to retract and open up those tubes. I've got my locking fork. What I'm going to do is hold the ends of the thread cradle, and I'm going to pull this out. And this is all information that was in that tip clip with using the bypass brackets. Here is my loop for pulling the elastic thread through. So I'm going to put my locking fork down. I'm going to put my elastic thread into this loop. And I think because the elastic thread does have some texture to it, using the bypass bracket does make a difference. And now, but you can try it on your machine. If it works fine going through your air threading tubes through your looper, perfectly fine. And I'm pulling a big long piece. I want to make sure everything is up. Now, put my thread cradle here. I'm going to cut off some of this. I'm going to leave it a little bit longer. Typically, we say a 4-inch tail just hanging out of the eye of the looper. But because the elastic tends to snap back when you cut it, and when you bring it up, I'm going to give myself a little more length, maybe just a little less than that. I'll pull it back just a smidge. Okay, so I've pulled back and closed up my air threading tubes. Let me move this out of the way. I'm going to close up shop. I've already threaded my needle. Let me bring my machine around again. That's a lovely sound, isn't it? Okay. And I'm going to shut the light off so that it doesn't glare, because I needed that so you could see the inside of the machine. So I'm going to go to my settings and shut that light off. That's better. And let me lighten that up a smidge. Okay, so just to review again, I'm going to go back to the screen. I want you to see these settings. So I've got my chain needle, and I'm using my right chain needle. That's the RC. I've got that on the default setting for tension of 3.3. I brought my chain looper tension up to 2, but you can gauge yourself on your machines. Hey, Catalina. Hi, Joey from Denmark. This is exciting. But you can bring your tensions on your chain looper between 1 and 2, probably depending on the fabric that you're using and the amount of gathering and tightness of the gathers that you want. You can find your sweet spot with that. I kept mine on 2 and I liked it. My stitch length is 4.0, and this is important because when you think of gathering, you think about cranking up your differential feed setting. I left mine on 1.0. On other machines, that may be designated as N, neutral or normal, okay? So let me show you and talk about this for how you're going to gauge your gathering. Let me go to my camera for this. This is that same gauze. Again, I ran that rolled hem with the 12-weight spaghetti thread that's variegated. But you can see on the right side, and you are going to stitch right side up, face up. I drew my lines 3/4 of an inch apart. There's no particular right or wrong distance. It's a matter of how many lines of stitching you want to do, how close together you want them. That's entirely up to you. But I did 5 lines of stitching. But I'm going to go to my face camera and tell you how I did this, because this is what I like to mention for gauging how much fabric do I need for these things. I cut this piece of gauze. It's probably about, I don't know, 7 or 8 inches long, but it's exactly 20 inches wide from side to side. And that way, if I use an even number, I can definitely gauge exactly how big or how much gathering I'm getting for that and decide. Now, and I wrote down my settings. When I did this one, this is the one that you saw under the screen. This also started off as 20 inches, all right? After I did 4 rows across of the stitching, which you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, the first 2 are very close together, or actually this has 5, I'm sorry. I did the 5 rows of stitching. The width came down to about 9.5 inches. Then the next secret is blast the elastic with steam. You're going to hold your iron about 1/2 inch above the elastic side, and you're going to see it go, and it shrinks it back to the original size. So that's how you'll get your maximum gathering. So this went down to about 8 inches, some maybe just a hair over, maybe 8 1/8 or something like that. On the striped cotton, as I mentioned, it's a little bit crisper. Again, I started off with a 20-inch. I did 5 rows of stitching. After just the stitching, it came down to 11 1/4 inches wide. And then after steaming it, it went down to 9 3/4 inches. So you can see that steaming really can make a big difference. And all you're going to do is just hover your iron over it, and you'll hear me do that. You won't see it on screen because I haven't got a camera over where my iron is. But by giving that elastic a good steam and hovering your iron about 1/2 inch above it, blasting it with the steam, you'll see that elastic will shrink in even more. So let's take a look at this in action and go to the machine. Okay, and here's my needle thread. So what I'm going to do is I am going to follow my lines on this. Let me just straighten this. Oops, that's worse. I'm moving my machine instead of the camera. I think it's easier. Okay, so here we go. I've got my right side face up. I've already done my rolled hem on the edge. Much easier to do that. I'm lining up my needle. And even sometimes I'll just use the edge of my presser foot as my guide between straight lines. But when you're doing something with elastic thread, don't depend on that. Oh, you know what I want to do first? Let me bring the elastic up to the top on a scrap piece. I was just testing out some thread colors. This is just a scrap of that same striped fabric. Let me just bring that elastic up to the top because it's still underneath in the eye of the looper under this. So let's bring that up to the top. I think I can chain off a little bit. Yeah. And actually, I do want to chain off because you could see when I was, well, no, you couldn't. While I was pulling the fabric to the back, the elastic looked long. When I let it go, it's just a short little tail. So I am going to pull that and give myself a little extra. And the thing is that if you only chain off a little bit, cut your thread, I guarantee you're going to have to keep rethreading your chain looper. So don't do that. It's a pain. So I am going to cut this. And you can see that elastic retracted back. Let me just see if it's still in the eye of the looper. No, it is not. So I should have left it longer. But we'll just do a little quick review here. Okay. Where did I put my thread cradle? Okay, well, anyway, I'll get this through and we will carry on. I'll just pull. I'll use a different color thread. No big deal. I used the red thread for the thread cradle so you could see it. This you're not going to see very well. Okay. Let me make sure this thread is out of the coordinates. There we go. Okay. And actually, this gives me a chance to say When you're pulling your thread out of that open air threading tube, you're going to pull it right out at the mouth of it. You want to make sure it still stays within these two little guide holes. Okay, here we go. And that's an example of it being kind of a pain if you don't leave a long enough thread when you cut each line of stitching. Make sure it's up and over that. Here we are. Okay, I think we're back in business, folks. Okay. Let me just bring it up on my sample fabric again. I always say, even in person classes, it's always good when something happens that you didn't want to happen necessarily, because it shows you how to fix it, and that it's not the end of being able to do something. You can just keep going along. So let me try it lengthwise. And you notice I'm not pushing hard, but I am helping the fabric advance because it is elastic thread, and it will gather, but you don't want to get any kind of a big knot at the end of your stitching line, or beginning, I should say. And I'm going to give myself a big long chain so that, and I'm going to raise the foot before I cut the fabric, so all of the tension is off the elastic thread and it doesn't go bouncing back into the machine again. That's not what we want. So I'm going to hold that, give it a snip, and I think we'll be ready to roll. Yes. Okay, so I've got it all up and ready. So I'm just going to do a couple of lines of this on this fabric. But I do think that for testing purposes, if you cut a length, and it doesn't necessarily have to be 20 inches, but I like to work with whole numbers simply because it's much easier for my brain to divide that. If you wanted to try 10 inches or something like that, you could definitely do that. So I'm putting this under. I'm getting my, oh, and also you typically see me use my clear foot. I found that using the C13 covered chain stitch foot, it really gripped the fabric a little bit more. I kept my presser foot pressure on the default setting on the top of the machine on 4. But I found that using this foot made the stitching easier. So that's another tip. So I'm going to just line up my needle with that first line, put my needle down. I'm going to just hold my thread tail to get it going for a few stitches. And you can see I've got flat hands, and I'm going to help it advance a little bit with that elastic thread. Okay, we're going. And I'm just watching the indicator ridge on the toe of my foot and keeping it aligned with the line on the fabric. And you can see it gathering up in back. I'm going to chain right off the end. I'm coming to the edge. I'm going to put my presser foot up to totally release the tension on the elastic thread. And you can see it bounce back a little bit. And I'm turning my hand wheel backwards, away from me, just a little bit, to pull that thread out even a little bit more. And I'm going to hold on to it and make sure it doesn't snap back into the machine. So let's take a look at this on the table camera. Here's just one row. And you can see how pretty that is. Now, I might not have hit the line absolutely right on the money every single place, but you can see that 12-way thread is very pretty. But if you just wanted the machine, the needle thread to disappear, you could just match it with serger cone thread to your fabric. There's one line. And this is why I say, if you think you can eyeball it with just using the edge of your foot, then good luck. But I cannot, and mine got very kind of wiggly and irregular. So let's go and come back to the machine and do another line of stitching. So now I'm on the second line. I'm going to hold that thread to get my needle, get it going on that line of stitching, the second line. Put my presser foot down, and as you're stitching subsequent rows from the first one, you want to make sure you smooth out the fabric and keep it flat as it's going under the foot. You don't want to stitch over gathering. So I'm just keeping my fingers on here till I take a few stitches on my next row. Okay, now what I'm doing with my right and left hand, mostly my left hand, is kind of smoothing those gathers. As I go along. And really, it's pretty easy once you have a few little tips that you know, because all you're basically doing is straight stitching. A chain stitch is really just a serger straight stitch on the top especially. But can you see how if I didn't have these guidelines, it would be kind of hard with the gathers to eyeball and get nice even spacing. And I could actually stitch faster than this, but because I'm on camera and I'm working around these cameras, I have to kind of slow down so I can see exactly what I'm doing. Okay, I'm going to pull my elastic a little bit more. Okay, and actually I think it might have snapped back, and this is exactly what I'm talking about with the elastic. It has a mind of its own. So let me just rethread real fast. I'm not going to change cameras here. I think after 2 tries, you've got that idea. And actually, when I was doing this yesterday, this did not happen. I think it's just because I'm trying to work around the camera. And I didn't have this issue yesterday at all. So, pulling my thread up. See, that locking fork is handy for a lot of different things because I'm not going to snap or cut the thread by accident. Okay, here's my elastic. Pull it through. Okay. Pull it back just a little bit. Don't let it get caught under there the way I just did. If you do that, open up your machine and set it. Now I'm going to just test, I'm going to bring up that thread on my scrap fabric. I always call this starter fabric, just to make sure the thread is on the top side of the machine. I'm giving myself a nice long chain. Actually, I had a nice long chain before. So, okay, let me hold this and cut. Okay, it's not going anywhere. All right, so let's do one last line of this. Ellen says, is there a size shown on my spool of elastic thread? Are you talking about the thickness of the elastic or how many yards are on it, Ellen? If so, I'm sure the packaging gave the amount of yardage, but as I said earlier, that's long gone, so I don't have anything on that. But I do think it's Dritz, and you can probably find it at your local sewing machine dealer, or if you don't have one nearby, you can find other resources for it. But I think there are some differences in the elastic threads, and as I say, I think this was just a Dritz thread. It was nothing fancy or super expensive to use. I can show you what it looks like under the close-up camera in just a minute. I'm going to do one more line of stitching first, though. So, okay, so I'm lining up with my third line, getting my needle in there. And probably another good suggestion would be if you're doing a garment and the pattern calls for a 5/8 inch seam allowance, cut your seam allowance 1 inch wide, and that way you'll have plenty of thread in that seam allowance so that it's not going to start pulling out. And then once you have the garment all finished or your project all finished, you can definitely trim that away if you want. So let's do that last line. I'm holding my elastic thread again. Get it going. And let's keep that fabric nice and flat as it's going under the needle. But the lines make it really pretty foolproof. If you don't smooth out your fabric and you're stitching over the gathers, you're not going to have the right dimensions on your finished garment. That's why you want to keep them nice and flat and smooth as they're going under the foot and needle. Okay. I'm going to put my pressure foot up. I'm going to pull that thread chain just a little bit, or a lot more actually. Cut my thread. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at this under the camera. Okay, here are my 3 lines of stitching, and you can see I wasn't exactly on my drawn lines, but as long as they're pretty even, that's all that matters. There's that bolder 12 weight thread that's showing. So again, that's up to you whether you want to do that or not. Now, I'm going to measure this before I steam it so that you can see what that measures. I've got a ruler right here. And from edge to edge, it's about it's about 9 1/4 inches. Let me just show you. Yeah, it's about 9 1/4. All right, now I am going to go over to my iron, and I'm going to, with the elastic stitching side up, I'm going to give this a good steam, and then we're going to remeasure it. But you can see, even without the steaming, look how nice that looks. It's adorable. And I love this little edge on the top, too, Really, really pretty. So I'm going to give it a blast of steam. You'll probably hear it. I've got my Laura Star all heated up. Hang on a second, and I'll be right back. That's the steam you hear. Okay, now you can see already, I haven't put it down to measure, you can see already how it's tightened up those gathers a little bit. But let's measure it to see what the measurement looks like after it's been steamed. Remember, it was 20 inches to start, 9 1/4 after I just did the stitching. So let's see what it measures now. Now, let me just smooth out those edges so that we're accurate. It is down to 8 inches. Let me show you on the, whoops, I've got it down too low. Okay, so I've got the one end of the ruler on this side. Here's the other one. And we're down to just a hair, maybe 8 1/8 inches. So it went from 9 1/4 after steaming down to 8 1/8. So it does make a difference to do that. So that is the deal on shearing on your serger. But again, the main things I want you to take away are you don't have the fussiness of hand winding your bobbin and not having that much, because you would need multiple bobbins to wind on your sewing machine. This gives you a really beautiful result with just stitching along. And the, let's show you the elastic thread just so that, Ellen, you can see that. I'm done stitching for right now, so let me pull it off of the machine. And I'll show you that up close just so that you can see it. I've still got plenty here. To tell you the truth, I had to go searching. I knew I had plenty of elastic thread, but it was a little bit of a treasure hunt to find it so that I could show this online. Okay, so I'm going to go over to my other camera. Okay, here is my spool of elastic thread. And this is about how wide it is. Let me come in a little closer for you. So that gives you an idea. It's just a round, it's almost like a cord. And there's the amount of stretch it has in it. Let me just show you with my hands here. So it's nice and stretchy. And it's very comfortable. It's not scratchy or anything on your skin, if you're concerned about that. I've never had an issue with it. But here is that technique with just serger comb thread. And you can see the stitching basically kind of disappears. I think I used a cream color thread on this. I didn't have a light enough blue serger comb for that. But if you wanted that stitching on the outside to be part of your surface design, use something contrasting. You could go with either a contrasting serger comb thread or up to a 12 weight. I would suggest a cotton thread or polyester thread as opposed to rayon. If you do use rayon, slow down, because it is more prone to breakage on a serger. A little bit, not terrible, but it is a little more fragile than a cotton or a polyester. So it's really kind of fun, and I hope this gets you going on a new technique on your serger. Very easy to do, surprisingly easy to do once you have those settings. So let's review that one more time for you, and you can always go back to the recording. It's recorded on my YouTube, but let's take a look at my settings. Here we go. So I had in my right my right chain needle was on 3.3, which I believe is the default setting. Your chain looper tension can be anywhere between 1 and 2. Mine was on 2. for a little bit tighter gathering. My stitch length was on 4. And my differential feed I left alone on 1. And that is the thing that I did want to mention and emphasize with you, that you do not need to crank it up the way you typically do with gathering on your serger with regular serger cone thread or whatever you're using. So we ran a little bit over simply because of the camera glitch. But don't forget, if you want to check out, I will be at the Aurora Sewing Center event. It's called Camp Stitch Away. If you go onto their website, I'm not sure whether there are any openings still for this weekend. It's the 11th and 12th at Salvatore's Hospitality in Depew, New York. Also, for the specials on my website for the Thread Fusion, the Wonderfill spaghetti threads, the locking forks, all of those things, the code is April Surge, all uppercase, all together. So that's that, and that's for 10% off of all of those things. So if you have any questions or anything, let me know and shoot me an email. Don't put them in the chat, because once I finish this live, I typically don't go back to the chat to check those. But thank you to everybody from around the world, from Denmark, France, and everybody in the U.S. as well. I hope you all have a great National Serger Month, the best time of the year, we know that. And again, if you're thinking about buying a new serger, and it's a Bernina or Burnett, shoot me an email with your address and I'll send you a rebate coupon, but you have to do it prior to making your purchase. So thanks for joining me, and I will see you next month with something else exciting for your sergers. And also, again, a shout out to Yolanda for this. She was the one who suggested this. I did, last month's was on the beading with a flat lock stitch, and that was also because somebody had sent in a request for that. So I do read your requests. So if there's something specific that you want to know about, you want to see demonstrated, I am very happy to get suggestions, okay? So thanks very much. Enjoy the